How to manage your money like the 1%. Introduction. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others work twice as hard but stay broke? I used to think it was about talent, or luck, or having rich parents. I was wrong about all of it. Here's what nobody tells you about money. There are two types of people in this world. People who own things and people who are owned by things. The difference between these two groups determines everything. When I discovered this truth, it changed my entire life. I went from having $43 in my bank account to building real wealth using a simple system that anyone can follow. The crazy part: the richest people in the world have been using this exact approach for decades. But first, let me show you something that will shock you. Out of all the wealthy people in the world, 75% are entrepreneurs who own businesses. Another 15% are investors who own assets. 7% inherited money, which means they own trusts and investments. 3% are athletes, entertainers, and artists who own rare, valuable skills. And here's the kicker: 0% are people who just earn a salary and nothing else. What do you notice about the first four groups? They all own something. The entrepreneurs own businesses that work for them. The investors own assets that grow in value. The rich kids own trusts that pay them. The superstars own skills that nobody else has. If you don't own something, you become what's owned. But here's the good news that nobody talks about. You can start owning things today, right now, no matter how much money you make. You just need to know the right system. I call it the 25155010 rule, and it's about to change everything for you. Chapter 1: The 25% that works while you sleep. What if I told you that your money could have a job? Not just any job, but a job that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even while you're sleeping? Most people never think about this. They work for money, but they never make money work for them. That's the difference between staying broke and building real wealth. This is why the first rule is simple. 25% of everything you earn goes into assets that grow in value over time. These are things that put money in your pocket instead of taking money out. Let me tell you a story that perfectly explains why this matters so much. There were two friends, Billy and Phil. Both were smart, hardworking guys who wanted to build wealth. But they made one very different choice, and it changed their entire financial future. Billy started investing when he was 20 years old. He wasn't making much money, so he could only put away $200 every month. It felt like nothing. His friends were buying new cars and going on expensive trips while Billy was putting his money into boring investments. Sometimes he felt like he was missing out. Phil watched Billy do this and thought he was crazy. "Why are you investing such a small amount?" Phil said, "I'm going to wait until I'm making more money, then I'll invest bigger amounts and catch up quickly." So Phil waited. He focused on his career, worked hard, and started making good money. At 30 years old, he finally felt ready to start investing. By then, he was earning much more than Billy had been at 20, so he put away $300 every month instead of Billy's $200. Phil felt smart about this decision. He was investing 50% more money each month. Surely he would end up with more wealth than Billy, right? Let's fast forward to when both men reached 60 years old and stopped investing. Here's what happened. Billy had invested $200 per month for 40 years. That's a total of $96,000 of his own money that he put in. Phil had invested $300 per month for 30 years. That's a total of $108,000 of his own money that he put in. So Phil put in $12,000 more of his own money than Billy did. Phil should have more wealth, right? Wrong. When they calculated their final numbers, assuming a 10% annual return, which is the historical average of the stock market, here's what they discovered. Billy's investments were worth $1,264,816. Phil's investments were worth $678,146. Billy invested $12,000 less than Phil, but ended up with almost $600,000 more. How is that possible? It's the power of compound growth, and it's the closest thing to magic that exists in the real world. When Billy invested $200 at age 20, that money didn't just sit there. It started earning returns. Those returns earned returns. And those returns earned returns on the returns. For 40 years, his money was growing and multiplying in ways that seemed impossible. Phil's money grew too, but it only had 30 years to compound. Those missing 10 years at the beginning cost him nearly $600,000. This is why starting early beats starting big every single time. This is why the 25% rule matters so much. The sooner you start, the more powerful this effect becomes. But what exactly should you invest in? I'm glad you asked, because this is where most people get confused and make expensive mistakes. Think of investments like a ladder. The bottom rungs are safe but slow. The top rungs are risky but potentially fast. Most people should start at the bottom and only move up as they learn, and can afford to lose money. The bottom rung is index funds. These are like buying a tiny piece of 500 different companies all at once. You're not trying to pick winners. You're buying a slice of the entire economy. It's boring, it's simple, and it works. The second rung is real estate. This could be rental properties that tenants pay you for, or it could be real estate investment trusts that let you own a piece of buildings without actually buying a whole building yourself. The third rung is skills. Learning something valuable like coding, writing, sales, or marketing. This is actually one of the highest return investments you can make, because no one can take these skills away from you, and they can dramatically increase your income. The fourth rung is online businesses. Things like dropshipping, digital products, or online services. These can pay off huge, but they require a lot of work and most of them fail. The fifth rung is individual stocks. This is where you try to pick the next Apple or Tesla. It's tempting, it's exciting, and it's basically gambling unless you really know what you're doing. The top rung is alternative investments like Bitcoin, gold, art, or collectibles. These can make you rich overnight or poor by morning. They're fun to play with, but they're not how you build a foundation. Start with index funds. Master that. Then move up the ladder only when you can afford to lose what you're risking. Chapter 2: The Accounts That Make You Rich. Here's something that will blow your mind. Peter Thiel, one of the founders of PayPal, has a retirement account worth over $5 billion. The same type of account that you can open today with $100. How is that possible? It's because he used tax-advantaged accounts that most people either don't know about or don't use properly. Let me explain why this matters. Imagine you're in a race, but you're carrying a heavy backpack while everyone else gets to run freely. That backpack is taxes, and the people running freely are using the right accounts. When you invest in a regular account, you pay taxes on every dollar you make. But when you invest in the right accounts, you can legally pay zero taxes on your investment gains. Over time, this difference is enormous. There are different accounts for different countries, but the principle is the same everywhere. The government wants you to save for retirement and other goals, so they give you special accounts where your money can grow tax-free. In the US, there's the Roth IRA and the 401k. In the UK, there's the ISA. In Canada, there's the RRSP and TFSA. Almost every country has some version of these accounts. The setup is simple, but most people never do it because they think it's complicated. Let me walk you through exactly how it works. You open the account online, which takes about 10 minutes. You connect it to your bank account. You set up automatic transfers, so that money moves from your paycheck into this account every month without you having to think about it. Then you buy 3 things with that money. I call it the 3-bucket strategy, and it's so simple that you could explain it to a child. Bucket 1 holds pieces of American companies. These are the biggest, most successful businesses in the world, like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. You buy a fund that owns tiny pieces of all of them. Bucket 2 holds pieces of companies from around the world. Europe, Japan, Canada, everywhere outside America. This gives you global diversification, so you're not betting everything on one country. Bucket 3 holds government bonds. These are basically loans to the government. They pay you back slowly but safely. This bucket provides stability when the other 2 buckets go up and down, You put about 60% of your money in bucket 1, 30% in bucket 2, and 10% in bucket 3. That's it. You're not picking stocks. You're not timing the market. You're not trying to outsmart anyone. You're just buying the entire world economy and letting it grow. Every month, you add more money to these 3 buckets in the same proportions. You do this for 20, 30, or 40 years. You ignore the news. You ignore the ups and downs. You just keep adding money and let compound growth do its magic. This strategy has made more people wealthy than any other investment approach in history. It's boring, it's simple, and it works. Chapter 3: The 15% that saves your life. Let me tell you about the worst financial mistake I ever made and how it taught me one of the most important lessons about money. I was 18 years old and just got my first real job. I needed a car to get to work, but I had no savings. So I did what most people do. I took out a loan and bought a Volkswagen Golf. It felt like freedom. For the first time in my life, I had my own car, my own independence. I even used some extra money from the loan to buy a nice stereo system. For about 3 months, I felt like I was on top of the world. I was working, earning money, and driving my own car. Life was good. Then one morning, the engine exploded. Just like that, my car was dead. No warning, no gradual decline, just complete failure. And I had no backup plan. No savings. No safety net. Nothing. Here's what made it worse. If I couldn't get the car fixed, I would lose my job. But I didn't have money to fix it, because every penny I earned was already committed to bills and loan payments. So I had to borrow more money to fix the car. This created more debt, more monthly payments, and more financial pressure. What started as a simple car problem turned into a financial disaster that set me back an entire year. That car didn't just break down. It broke my finances and taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Without a stability fund, you're always one emergency away from financial ruin. This is why 15% of your income needs to go toward what I call your stability fund. It's money that sits there doing nothing most of the time, but when life hits you, it saves everything. Most people think they can't afford to save for emergencies, but the truth is you can't afford not to. Without this fund, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis that pushes you deeper into debt. So how much do you need? The magic number is 5 months of basic living expenses. Not your current expenses, your basic expenses. The absolute minimum you need to survive. Basic expenses are rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, transportation, insurance, and other true necessities. Not restaurants, not entertainment, not shopping. Just survival. Let's say your basic expenses are $1,500 per month. Multiply that by 5 and you get $7,500. That's your target for your stability fund. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but think about it this way. Would you rather save $7,500 over time, or would you rather go into debt and pay thousands in interest when an emergency hits? Now, where you keep this money is just as important as having it. There are 3 rules that your stability fund must follow. Rule 1: it must be easy to access. You should be able to get this money within 24 hours maximum. Don't lock it up in accounts that penalize you for early withdrawal. Rule 2: it must be zero risk. Never put your emergency fund in the stock market, even in safe investments. When emergencies happen, the market might be down, and you can't wait for it to recover. Rule 3: it must always be earning something. Don't let it sit in a dead account earning nothing, because inflation will eat away at its value over time. High-yield savings accounts are perfect for this. As I'm writing this, you can find accounts paying 4% to 5% interest with no penalties and easy access to your money. Building this fund might seem overwhelming, but there are 3 strategies that can help you build it faster than you think. The first strategy is the paycheck sweep. The moment your paycheck hits your account, you automatically move 15% of it to your stability fund. Don't think about it, don't hesitate, just move it immediately. The second strategy is the replacement promise. If you have to use money from your stability fund, you promise yourself to replace it with your very next paycheck. This keeps the fund intact and ready for the next emergency. The third strategy is the save by spending hack. Use apps that round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and save the difference. Buy coffee for $3.60, and the app rounds it up to $4 and saves that 40 cents. It seems small, but it adds up surprisingly fast. Once your stability fund is fully funded, you have two choices. You can either redirect that 15% into your growth investments, or you can start building toward other financial goals. But first, you need to master the biggest expense category of all. Chapter 4, the 50% that feeds you, not your ego. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable. Why do people earning $100,000 per year still live paycheck to paycheck? The answer reveals one of the biggest mistakes people make with money. They confuse looking rich with being rich, and it costs them everything. Let me paint you a picture of two 20-year-olds I knew. On the surface, one looked successful and the other looked broke. But the reality was exactly the opposite. My friend always wore designer shirts, expensive watches, and went to the nicest restaurants. He drove a car with monthly payments that cost more than most people's rent. When we went out, he always picked up the check and made sure everyone knew how much money he was spending. I was the opposite. I wore basic clothes from discount stores. My watch cost $20. I brought packed lunches to work while he bought expensive meals every day. I drove an old, reliable car that I had bought with cash. Looking at us, everyone would have assumed my friend was the successful one. He certainly looked the part. But here's what people didn't see. He had $43.20 in his bank account and several credit cards that were nearly maxed out. His expensive lifestyle was entirely funded by debt. I had over $1,000 invested and growing, plus a decent stability fund. Every month, my wealth was increasing while his debt was growing. The difference wasn't our incomes. We made similar amounts of money. The difference was how we spent what we made. Wealth isn't what you see. It's what you don't see. It's the money that's quietly growing in investments instead of being displayed through expensive purchases. This is why 50% of your income should go to essentials, and only essentials. Not things that make you look successful, but things that actually keep you alive and functioning. Real essentials are housing, food, transportation, basic clothing, insurance, and utilities. Everything else is a luxury, even if it doesn't feel like it. But here's where most people get confused. They've convinced themselves that many luxuries are actually essentials. The latest iPhone isn't essential. Any phone that makes calls and sends texts will do. Eating out isn't essential. Groceries and home cooking are much cheaper. Brand name clothes aren't essential. Clothes that fit and look decent are enough. I'm not saying you should never enjoy these things. But they shouldn't come out of your essentials budget. They should come from your reward money, which we'll talk about later. The reason I cap essentials at 50% is because most people are already spending 60% to 70% of their income on what they think are essentials. By forcing yourself to live on 50%, you're forced to make real choices about what matters. This also changes your mindset. Instead of trying to spend more of what you earn, you start focusing on earning more so you can invest more. That's the mindset shift that creates real wealth. There are two expense categories that kill more wealth than anything else: housing and transportation. Housing is usually the biggest expense, but it doesn't have to grow just because your income grows. When your lease comes up for renewal, negotiate. Most landlords would rather keep a good tenant than deal with the hassle of finding a new one. If you want to be more aggressive, consider house hacking. Rent out a spare room, get roommates, or even move back with your parents temporarily while you build your financial foundation. Transportation is the other wealth killer. Car payments are one of the biggest mistakes people make. They lease brand new cars for the monthly status hit and end up paying for years on something that loses value every day. Buy used cars that have already taken their biggest depreciation hit. A 3-year-old car can be just as reliable as a new one, but cost half as much. If you live in a city with good public transportation, consider not having a car at all. But cutting expenses only works if you have systems in place to make the right choices automatically. Willpower fails when you're tired, stressed, or bored. That's why I use a simple system of questions that I ask myself before buying anything. These questions have saved me from countless bad purchases over the years. First, I ask, is this an impulse purchase? If I've been thinking about it for a while and it fits in my essentials budget, I buy it. But if it's impulse, I use the 7-day rule. The 7-day rule is simple. Wait 7 days before buying anything that isn't essential. After 7 days, ask yourself if you still want it. Most of the time, the answer is no. The excitement fades, and you realize it wasn't that important. If you still want it after 7 days, ask yourself, am I buying this for the brand or for the value? If it's for the brand, don't buy it. You're being influenced by marketing, not making a rational decision. If it's for value, ask yourself the final question, will this actually improve my life? If the answer is yes, go ahead and buy it. But if you're buying it to impress someone, kill boredom, or chase a temporary feeling, it's not worth your money. This system becomes automatic after a while. You start making better decisions without even thinking about the questions. You become intentional with your money instead of reactive. Remember, this isn't about being cheap or depriving yourself. It's about being intentional, so that your money can go toward things that actually matter to you. Chapter 5, the 10% that keeps you sane. Let me be honest with you about something. Money isn't just about growth, stability, and essentials. You're allowed to enjoy it too. Most people either save nothing and spend everything, or they try to save everything and spend nothing. Both approaches fail for the same reason: they're not sustainable. This is why 10% of your income should go toward rewards. Not as an excuse to be irresponsible, but as a strategy to make your entire financial plan sustainable for the long term. I learned this lesson the hard way through a series of mistakes that nearly cost me my health and my relationships. In my early years of building wealth, I was obsessed with saving and investing every possible dollar. I thought that spending money on anything fun or enjoyable was a waste. I wanted to optimize everything for maximum financial growth. So I stopped taking vacations. I stopped going out with friends. I stopped buying gifts for birthdays and special occasions. I thought I was being smart and disciplined. What actually happened was that I got sick. The stress of working constantly without any relief gave me shingles. Yes, shingles, a condition that's usually associated with elderly people. The doctor told me it was stress-induced and recommended that I take a vacation immediately. That's when I took my first ski trip, and I realized what I had been missing. Vacation didn't just help me relax, it made me more productive when I returned to work. I was sharper, more creative, and more motivated. But the damage to my social life was worse than the damage to my health. By constantly turning down invitations and skipping social events to save money, I had alienated most of my friends. I lost relationships that took years to rebuild. The final wake-up call came when I forgot my wife's birthday because I was so focused on a business project. That's when I realized that I had completely lost perspective on what money was supposed to do for my life. Money is a tool. It's supposed to make your life better, not worse. If your financial plan makes you miserable, stressed, and isolated, then you're doing it wrong. That's why the 10% for rewards isn't optional. It's essential for making everything else work. But to get the most value from this money, you need to be strategic about how you spend it. Some categories of spending give you much more happiness and life satisfaction than others. The first category is experiences. Vacations, concerts, dinners with friends, weekend getaways. These create memories that last forever and often appreciate in value over time. Years later, you'll still be talking about that amazing trip or that incredible concert. The second category is relationships. Gifts for people you love, celebrations, activities that bring you closer to family and friends. Money spent on relationships is never wasted because relationships are what make life meaningful. The third category is health and personal growth. Gym memberships you actually use, healthy food, stress relief activities, books, courses, hobbies that make you better. This is money invested in yourself. The fourth category is convenience. Services that save you time and energy so you can focus on what matters most. This might be house cleaning, meal delivery, or other services that free up your time for more important things. To make this system work, you need to set up what I call a joy jar. Open a separate bank account and automatically transfer 10% of every paycheck into it. This money is for rewards only. When the joy jar is empty, you wait until next month. You can't borrow from your other categories to fund fun activities. This forces you to be intentional about how you spend your reward money. The beautiful thing about this system is that it removes guilt from spending. When you know that your investments, emergency fund, and essentials are all taken care of, you can enjoy your reward money without any anxiety. You're not cheating on your financial goals. You're not being irresponsible. You're following a sustainable plan that accounts for the fact that you're a human being with needs beyond just accumulating wealth. This 10% is what makes the other 90% possible. It's what keeps you motivated during the long journey of building wealth. It's what prevents you from burning out and giving up. And here's the surprising thing. When you give yourself permission to enjoy money in a structured way, you often end up spending less on impulse purchases throughout the month. The joy jar satisfies your need for fun spending, so you're less tempted to make random purchases from your other categories. Chapter 6: Making It All Work, Your Complete Money Transformation. Now that you understand all four components of the 25155010 system, let me show you how to put it all together into a complete money management system that actually works in real life. But first, let me tell you why most money management advice fails. Most people approach money management the wrong way. They try to restrict their spending, which feels like punishment. They tell themselves, I can't buy this, or I shouldn't spend money on that. This creates mental pain and resistance. The 25155010 system works differently. Instead of restricting, you're distributing. Instead of saying, I can't afford this, you're saying, this comes from my joy jar budget. When you shift from restriction to distribution, something magical happens. It stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like organization. You're not fighting against your desires, you're managing them systematically. The secret to making this system work isn't willpower or discipline. It's automation. You want to set things up so that the right choices happen automatically, without you having to think about them or make decisions every month. Here's exactly how to do it. Step 1 is to calculate your numbers. Take your monthly after-tax income and multiply by 0.25, 0.15, 0.50, and 0.10. These are your four target amounts for growth, stability, essentials, and rewards. If you make $4,000 per month after taxes, your targets would be $1,000 for growth, $600 for stability, $2,000 for essentials, and $400 for rewards. Step 2 is to open the right accounts. You need a tax-advantaged investment account for your growth money, a high-yield savings account for your stability fund, your regular checking account for essentials, and a separate joy jar account for rewards. Step 3 is to set up automatic transfers. On the day your paycheck hits your main account, you want automatic transfers to move money into each of your other accounts. This happens before you have a chance to spend the money on anything else. Step 4 is to automate your investments. Set up automatic purchases of your 3-fund portfolio in your investment account. This money gets invested every month without you having to make any decisions or time the market. Step 5 is to track and adjust. For the first few months, watch your spending carefully to make sure your 50% essentials budget is realistic. If you're consistently going over, you need to either cut more expenses or temporarily reduce one of your other categories until you can increase your income. Once this system is set up and automated, it runs itself. Your money flows to the right places without you having to make painful decisions every day. The system removes the emotion and makes wealth building feel natural instead of forced. The timeline for this transformation looks different for everyone, but here's what you can expect if you stick with the system. In the first year, you'll build your emergency fund and establish your investment habit. This year is about creating the systems and proving to yourself that you can stick with them. By year 5, you'll start seeing serious growth in your investments. The compound effect will begin to show itself, and you'll realize that your money is actually working for you. By year 10, your investments might be generating more income than your job. This is when you start to feel true financial security for the first time. By year 20, you'll have real wealth. Not just money in the bank, but true financial independence where you have choices about how you spend your time. By year 30, you'll never have to worry about money again. Your investment income will be more than enough to cover all your expenses, and you'll have the freedom to do whatever you want with your life. But here's the most important thing to understand. This system only works if you actually follow it. Not just when you feel motivated, not just when it's convenient, but consistently, month after month, year after year. Most people will read this system, think it makes sense, and then do nothing. Or they'll try it for a few months and quit when they don't see immediate results. The people who become wealthy are the ones who start before they feel ready, stick with it when it's boring, and trust the process even when they can't see progress. Your first million starts with your next paycheck. The question isn't whether this system works, it's whether you'll work the system. What are you waiting for?